welcome back to my channel. This is Hidden Hand. Today I'm going to be reading, it's going to be a little shorter reading on the subject of, it's a follow-up on the subject of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program. This is Wikipedia.com, the counterintelligence program COINTELPRO. I'm going to read this memo, but I'm just going to read it from right here. COINTELPRO memo proposing a plan to expose the pregnancy of actress Jean Seberg, a financial supporter of the Black Panther Party, hoping to possibly cause her embarrassment or tarnish her image with the general public. Covert campaigns to publicly discredit activists and destroy their interpersonal relationships were a common tactic used by COINTELPRO agents. COINTELPRO, portmanteau derived from counterintelligence program 1956 through 1971, was a series of covert and at times illegal projects conducted by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting domestic political organizations. FBI records show that counterintelligence program resources targeted groups and individuals that the FBI deemed subversive, including feminist organizations, the Communist Party in the United States, anti-Vietnam War organizers, activists of the Civil Rights Movement or Black Power Party movement, e.g. Martin Luther King Jr., the Nation of Islam, and the Black Panther Party, environmentalist and animal rights organizations, the American Indian Movement, AIM, independence movements such as Puerto Rican independence, groups like the Young Lords, and a variety of organizations that were part of a broader New Left. The program also targeted the Ku Klux Klan in 1964. According to Noam Chomsky, in another instance in San Diego, the FBI financed, armed, and controlled an extreme right-wing group of former member of the Minutemen anti-communist paramilitary organization, transforming it into a group called the Secret Army Organization that targeted groups, activists, and leaders involved in the anti-war movement, using both intimidation and violent acts. The FBI has used covert operations against domestic political groups since its inception. However, covert operations under the official COINTELPRO label took place between 1956 and 1971. COINTELPRO tactics are still used to this day and have been alleged to include discrediting targets through psychological warfare, smearing individuals and groups using forged documents, and by planting false reports in the media, harassment, wrongful imprisonment, and illegal violence, including assassination. The FBI's stated motivation was protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order. Beginning in 1969, leaders of the Black Panther Party were targeted by the COINTELPRO and neutralized by being assassinated, imprisoned, publicly humiliated, or falsely charged with crimes. Some of the Black Panthers affected included Fred Hampton, Mark Clark, Zaid Shakur, Geronimo Pratt, Mumia Abu Jamal, and Marshall Conway. Common tactics used by COINTELPRO were perjury, witness harassment, witness intimidation, and withholding of evidence. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover issued directives governing COINTELPRO, ordering FBI agents to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of these movements, and especially their leaders. Under Hoover, the agent in charge of COINTELPRO was William C. Sullivan. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy personally authorized some of the programs. Although Kennedy only gave written approval for limited wiretapping of Martin Luther King's phones on a trial basis for a month or so, Hoover extended the clearance so his men were unshackled to look for evidence in any areas of King's life they deemed worthy. In April 2018, the Atlanta Black Star characterized the FBI as still engaging in COINTELPRO behavior by surveilling the Black Lives Matter movement. Internal documents dated as late as 2017 showed that the FBI had surveilled the movement. Centralized operations under COINTELPRO officially began in August 1956 with a program designed to increase factionalism, cause disruption, and win defections. Inside the Communist Party, CPUSA, tactics included anonymous phone calls, internal revenue service audits, and the creation of documents that would divide the American Communist Organization internally. An October 1956 memo from Hoover reclassified the FBI's ongoing surveillance of black leaders, including within COINTELPRO, with the justification that the movement was infiltrated by communists. In 1956, Hoover sent an open letter denouncing Dr. T.R.M. Howard, a civil rights leader, surgeon, and wealthy entrepreneur in Mississippi who had criticized FBI inaction in solving recent murders of George W. Lee, Emmett Till, and other African Americans in the South. When the Southern Christian Leader Conference, an African American civil rights organization, was founded in 1957, the FBI began to monitor and target the group almost immediately, focusing particularly on Bernard Roustan, Stanley Leviston, and eventually Martin Luther King Jr. The suicide letter that the FBI mailed anonymously to Martin Luther King Jr. in an attempt to convince him to commit suicide. Wow, I'm not going to read that. After the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, Hoover singled out King as a major target for COINTELPRO. Under pressure from Hoover to focus on King, Sullivan wrote, "In the light of King's powerful demagogic speech, we must mark him now, if we have not done so before, as the most dangerous I'm not going to say that either, of the future in this nation from the standpoint of communism, the black man, and national security." I don't know. That's not cool. But I guess it's history. Soon after, the FBI was systematically bugging King's home and his hotel rooms, as they were now aware that King was growing in stature daily as the most prominent leader in the civil rights movement. In the mid-1960s, King began to publicly criticize the Bureau for giving insufficient attention to the use of terrorism by white supremacists. Hoover responded by publicly calling King the most notorious liar in the United States. In his 1991 memoir, Washington Post journalist Carl Rowan asserted that the FBI had sent at least one anonymous letter to King encouraging him to commit suicide. Historian Taylor Branch documents an anonymous November 21st 64 suicide package sent by the FBI that contained audio recordings which were obtained through tapping King's phone and placing bugs throughout various hotel rooms over the past 2 years. Was created 2 days after the announcement of King's impending Nobel Prize. The tape, which was prepared by the FBI audio technician John Matter, documented a series of King's sexual indiscretions combined with a letter telling him, "There is only one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation." King was subsequently informed that the audio would be released to the media if he did not acquiesce and commit suicide prior to accepting his Nobel Peace Award. When King refused to satisfy their coercion tactics, the FBI Associated Director Cartha D. Lauch commenced a media campaign offering the surveillance transcripts to various news organizations, including Newsweek and Newsday, and even in 1969, as had been noted elsewhere, FBI efforts to expose Martin Luther King had not slackened, even though King had been dead for a year. The Bureau furnished ammunition to opponents that enabled attacks on King's memory and tried to block efforts to honor the slain leader. During the same period, the program also targeted Malcolm X. While an FBI spokesman has denied that the FBI was directly involved in Malcolm's murder in 1965, it is documented that the Bureau worked to widen the rift between Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad through infiltration and the sparking of acrimonious debates within the organization, rumor mongering, and other tactics designed to foster internal disputes, which ultimately led to Malcolm's assassination. The FBI heavily infiltrated Malcolm's Organization of Afro-American Unity. In the final months of his life, the Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Malcolm X by Manning Marable asserts that most of the men who plotted Malcolm's assassination were never apprehended, and that full extent of the FBI's involvement in his death cannot be known. Amidst the urban unrest of July to August 1967, the FBI began COINTELPRO Black Hate, which focused on King and the SCLC, as well as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Revolutionary Action Movement, the Deacons for Defense and Justice, Congress of Racial Equality, and the Nation of Islam. Black Hate established the Ghetto Informant Program and instructed 23 FBI officers to disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of black nationalist hate-type organizations. March 1968 memo stated the program's goal was to prevent the coalition of militant black nationalist groups, to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify the black militant nationalist movement, to pinpoint potent troublemakers and to neutralize them before they exercise their potential for violence against authorities, to prevent militant black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to both the responsible community and the liberals who were vestiges of sympathy, and to prevent the long-range growth of militant black organizations, especially among youth. Dr. King was said to have potential to be the Messiah figure should he abandon nonviolence and integrationism, and Stokely Carmichael was noted to have the necessary charisma to be a real threat in this way, as he was portrayed as someone who espoused a much more militant vision of black power. While the FBI was particularly concerned with leaders and organizers, they did not limit their scope of target to the heads of the organizations. Individuals such as writers were also listed among the targets of operations. This program coincided with a broader federal effort to prepare military response for urban riots, and began increased collaboration between the FBI, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and the Department of Defense. The CIA launched its own domestic espionage project in 1967 called Operation Chaos. Hold on. Excuse me. A particular target was the Poor People's Campaign, a national effort organized by King and the SCLC to occupy Washington, D.C. The FBI monitored and disrupted the campaign on a national level while using targeted smear tactics locally to undermine support for the march. The Black Panther Party was another targeted organization, wherein the FBI collaborated to destroy the party from the inside out. Overall, COINTELPRO encompassed disruption and sabotage of the Socialist Workers' Party, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, and the entire New Left social political movement, which included anti-war community and religious groups. A later investigation by the Senate Church Committee states that COINTELPRO began in 1956 in part because of frustration with Supreme Court rulings limiting the government's power to proceed overtly against dissident groups. Official congressional committees and several court cases have concluded that COINTELPRO operations against communist and socialist groups exceeded statutory limits on FBI activity and violated constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech and association. The program was secret until 1971 when the Citizen Commissions to investigate the FBI burgled an FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania, took several dossiers and exposed the program by passing this material to new agencies. The boxing match, known as Fight of the Century between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in March 1971, provided cover for the activist group to successfully pull off the burglary. And Muhammad Ali was himself a COINTEL target due to his involvement with the Nation of Islam and the anti-war movement. Many news organizations initially refused to publish the information. Within the year, Director J. Edgar Hoover declared that the centralized COINTELPRO was over and that all future co-intelligence program operations would be handled on a case-to-case basis. Additional documents were revealed in the course of separate lawsuits filed against the FBI by NBC correspondent Carl Stern, the Socialist Workers' Party, and a number of other groups. In 1976, the Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities of the United States Senate, commonly referred to as the Church Committee, for its chairman, Senator Frank Church of Idaho, launched a major investigation of the FBI and COINTELPRO. Many released documents have been partially or entirely redacted. The final report of the Select Committee castigated to conduct of the intelligence community in its domestic operations included COINTELPRO in no uncertain terms. The committee finds that the domestic activities of the intelligence community at times violated specific statutory prohibitions and infringed the constitutional rights of American citizens. The legal question involved in intelligence programs were often not considered. On other occasions, they were intentionally disregarded in the belief that because the program served the national security, the law did not apply. While intelligence officers on occasion failed to disclose to their superiors programs which were illegal or of questionable legality, the committee finds that the most serious breaches of duty were those of senior officials who were responsible for controlling intelligence activities and generally failed to assure compliance with the law. Many of the techniques used would be intolerable in a democratic society even if all of the targets had been involved in violent activity. But COINTELPRO went far beyond that. The Bureau conducted a sophisticated vigilante operation aimed squarely at preventing the exercise of the First Amendment rights of speech and association on the theory that preventing the growth of dangerous groups and the propagation of dangerous ideas would protect the national security and deter violence. The Church Committee documented a history of the FBI exercising political repression as far back as World War I. Through the 1920s, when agents were charged with rounding up anarchists, communists, socialists, reformists, and revolutionaries for deportation, the domestic operations were increased against political and anti-war groups from 1936 to 1976. I'm going to go on to the next. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and end this one here because my dogs are finding I need to switch them out. And I'll come back with a part 2 and 3 for this, probably even more. But I think the information pretty much speaks for itself, and it's just everything that I've already believed anyway, so it's kind of a confirmation bias for me. It might be for you as well. Let me know what you think below. I'll be back with more. Thank you for tuning. One love, one vibration.